It is time to wrap a very busy week with you on Yankees Baseball Daily. Bob Lorenz back with you now in studio after we spent the week in Dallas at the winter meetings. Also there, of course, our own Jack Curry and Bob Clappish of the Bergen Record and FoxSports.com. Now, it was in Dallas that two teams shook the baseball landscape with their activity, the Angels and the Marlins. And after years of falling just short in attempts to lure big-name talent out west, Halos owner Artie Moreno reeled in the biggest free agent on the board, Albert Pujols. Fresh off helping St. Louis to its second championship during his tenure there, Pujols shocked many people when he spurned the Cardinals and accepted a 10-year, $254 million deal from the Angels. In addition to securing the three-time National League MVP, the Angels also signed one of the top pitchers on the market, left-hander C.J. Wilson, who had been with the division rival Rangers. Wilson gets a 5-year deal to pitch in the middle of the Angels' rotation, and they also signed veteran reliever LaTroy Hawkins for 1 year. The Angels dominated the end of the winter meetings, but early on it was the Marlins who got things rolling, continuing their franchise makeover. Miami's biggest move was signing former Mets shortstop Jose Reyes to a 6-year, $106 million contract, putting the future of established Marlin Hanley Ramirez into question. Now, Miami was in on Albert Pujols, although they fell short in their pursuit of the slugger. They did bolster their rotation, signing veteran left-hander Mark Burley to that 4-year, $58 million deal. The Marlins also introduced their new closer, Heath Bell, who agreed on a 3-year deal just before the meeting. So, Bob, as we look at this, pretty nice and exciting bookends to the winter meetings as we talk about the big winners.
Well, I don't think there's any doubt that the real big winners were the Anaheim Angels. I mean, right now, if you had to say, they look like they could go all the way to the World Series with that team. They have a terrific rotation, and they've added one of the greatest hitters of our generation of all time into that lineup. I mean, they certainly look like they'll be able to run over the Rangers right now. And you know what? There's going to be a ripple effect in the East as well. They're going to make it tough for the Yankees. The Yankees almost have to win their division right now because there's no guarantee that the wild card is coming out of the East anymore.
Well, there's probably going to be 2 wild cards, so everybody's going to be looking for that second wild card. They're going to concede, hey, the Angels and the Rangers look so good. But what impressed me about the Angels is not only that they did this, but they did it in stealth mode. You had the Cardinals sitting there for 2 years trying to sign this guy, but just inching up, inching up. Even at the meetings, you got the sentiment when you talk to people that Pujols just wasn't in love with what was going on with the Cardinals.
Right.
The Angels swoop in, Artie Moreno, tired of being a bridesmaid, and now he gets to put Pujols in the middle of that order. Mike Scioscia does. And this is a team that had trouble scoring runs last year, so immediately Pujols makes them so much better.
And listen, Pujols looks like a villain right out of the gate, certainly in St. Louis for spurning the only team he's ever known. He could have been that iconic franchise player, had the statue outside in St. Louis. But you also now get the feeling from listening to him, Bob, that there was that disconnect at some point. Like he was telling them, you had 2 years to step up and make me feel really good about it, and it just didn't happen, so I went to Anaheim.
No, I mean, Albert Pujols thinks that he is the best hitter in baseball right now, and he certainly thinks that he's better than A-Rod, and he's always been aware of the difference in salary between him and A-Rod. Not that he was looking to top it, but at least get closer than he had been in his last contract. Now, the Cardinals, for whatever reason, just did not come up with the money. It just wasn't there. All of a sudden, Artie Moreno's got $50 million more on the table. That's a lot of money, $50 million. Who says no to $50 million? I do believe that Pujols wanted to stay, and he originally had intended to stay, but suddenly you're looking at a gap of $50 million. I'm sorry, there's nobody that would resist that.
You know what, let me get to something he said in 2009, and this is courtesy of the St. Louis Post-Dispatch. He said, do I want to be in St. Louis forever? Of course. People from other teams want to play in St. Louis, and they're jealous that we're in St. Louis because the fans are unbelievable. So why would you want to leave a place like St. Louis to go somewhere else and make $3 or $4 more million a year? It's not about the money. I already got my money. It's about winning, and that's it. Now, I get the money thing, $50 million, you're right. But also, it's about the winning. And if he, again, they're coming off a championship season, but it's about him wanting to be in a place where he feels wanted. I think everybody probably does, and he felt that from Artie Moreno.
Right. If you're the Cardinals, though, and you read that quote from 2 years ago and you're a Cardinal fan, you say to yourself, you did exactly what you said you weren't going to do. You went somewhere else for about $4 more million a year. But the Cardinals had the chance to try and sign this guy, and they just didn't get it done. As Bob said, a gap of $50 million. Pujols wasn't going to be worried about the statue. He wasn't going to be worried about being the next Stan Musial. He said he's going to go to the place that I guess had showed him more love. So you look at the Cardinals and their approach. They said at a press conference yesterday they were happy with the strategy that they used in trying to get this guy back. But this is a dark day in St. Louis. This would be the equivalent of the Yankees losing Derek Jeter. You can't let this happen if you're the St. Louis Cardinals. You had to try and keep this guy here. They had the time to do it. I think they had the resources to do it. They didn't get it done.
And who knows what factor played, how much it played into the fact that Tony La Russa's gone, and that had Pujols gone back to St. Louis, he'd be starting all over with a rookie manager who had no experience and really has no relationship with Albert. I mean, now he goes to Anaheim, and he goes to play for a manager who, in some ways, Mike Scioscia, in some ways, reminds him of Tony La Russa. I do think that was a factor weighing in Anaheim's favor.
All right, let's turn to the other big winner of the winter meetings, and that was the Florida Marlins, Miami Marlins. We're going to have to get used to that. But speaking of a new manager, Ozzie Guillen is now in charge of Mark Burley. He's in charge of Jose Reyes at the top of his lineup. He's got a closer in Heath Bell. That's suddenly a very different team.
Right, a very busy team. And what is even more interesting to me than the three guys that they brought in is the fact that they were also in on C.J. Wilson and Albert Pujols. They weren't ready to just have those three guys. They made a bigger offer to Pujols than the Cardinals did. But the moves that they made, they get a dynamic player in Reyes. Do I think Reyes is going to be healthy and running around the bases recklessly for 6 years? Probably not. He's going to get hurt at some point. They want to try and keep him on the field. I love the Burley move. I think that was the one pitcher the Yankees on the free agent market were interested in. But they were not going to go to the lengths that the Marlins did. And they needed a guy at the end of the game to close things down, and that's Heath Bell.
I tell you what, the Marlins are even further out on a limb than the Angels because the Marlins don't have this huge TV deal to draw upon. I mean, the Angels now have this new contract with Fox. It's going to give them $3 billion over the next over the next 20 years. The Marlins are dependent entirely on gate revenue. That's how they're going to pay for these salaries. It's a big experiment. It's a big gamble, considering Marlins fans usually don't come to see this team. So they got their ballpark now. They've got their players. They've written a lot of big checks. The question is, will the fans support them?